Hello everyone, my name is Joe Archino, and welcome back to This Is Why We Stand. You are about to listen to my interview with Robert Fuller as he shares the story of his service with the 101st Airborne during World War II. I can't thank this amazing man enough for his service to our country and for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with him. God bless Robert Fuller, and God bless America.
I grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey. It's near the George Washington Bridge. And went to high school there. And when I was finished up high school, I was still 17, so I didn't have signed up for the draft. And the summer prior to graduating, I went up and worked on a dairy farm. So when I got out of high school, I went up to the dairy farm and went to work up there, up in New York State, up in the Catskills. And then when I turned 18, I went to the draft board and signed in, and they said, "Oh, you're working on a farm?" I said, "Yes." Okay. They gave me a two-something. I can't think of the words once in a while they come out hard. That I didn't have to go. In other words, a deferment. That's and so I had the deferment, and so I decided in Christmas time of 1943 to go home, and for Christmas I talked to my parents. I said I'm going into service. So in January of 1944, I joined the Army. Went to Camp Upton, which was on Long Island first, and then went down to Texas. I went to a place called Camp Walters. It doesn't exist today, but then the last day, I was supposed to go on a 24-mile hike with all my equipment on. Just a week prior, my foot went in a hole when I was marching and wrenched the ankle, and the medics said I couldn't go on the march. So they sent me to Camp Hood after that. And I was there until I was sent to, I don't know where, this part I don't remember at all. Went to a port of embarkation to go to Europe. So I went on the Italian liner Rex. It was in New York Harbor at the start of the war. And so the Americans said, "No, this belongs to Italy. We're taking it over." So they made a troop ship out of it. And I went in through the Mediterranean into Naples in Italy as a replacement guy. I wasn't trained or anything. I mean, as far as joining the airborne outfits. So anyhow, somehow, again, I've lost track of how I got to Bastogne, but I got to Bastogne, and I came in right after, joined the 101st, right after General, I can't think of his name, broke through to Normandy, broke through to the area that was, we were Bastogne, in other words, where they were surrounded, and he broke through, and so I came in through however, and I didn't even know it was an airborne unit, and so I got to the company I was supposed to go with, and the first night I was there, the first sergeant comes over and came over, and he said, "Well, you're in an airborne outfit now. You got to sign this paper, because if you don't sign it, you don't belong." So, because every airborne man had to sign a waiver that when they joined the outfit. And so anyhow, that night, the first night when I was there, the sergeant said, "You got a gas mask?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Throw it in the corner over there." Then he said, "You got a bayonet?" "Yeah." "Throw it in the corner over there." You know, and then he says, "Oh, you're a pretty big guy at that point." And he said, "You know, we need a BAR man, a Browning automatic rifle." And so somebody else had it, a younger guy, I mean, not a younger guy, but shorter and everything. So all of a sudden I became the BAR man. Never fired a BAR before in my life. And so we got me all with all the equipment, and went to sleep. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, they come and said, "Everybody out." The company I joined was about a half a mile off of the main where the fighting was, and because they were on rests. And so, at 2 o'clock in the morning, said, "Everybody out, the Germans are attacking another section." So anyhow, we get out there and they come around, they put a couple grenades on me, my outfit, and so we were ready to go, and then all of a sudden, as usual, everything quieted down, and they said, "Okay, just go back to bed." But, you know,
you're already
come and go, right? It's come and go. And anyhow, so we stayed there until about January 25th, I think it was. The whole airborne outfit moved away from Bastogne, and they went over to Alsace in France, because the Germans had Germans and Americans were in this one area, and they heard the Germans were going to try and make a breakthrough to get into Germany from there, and they figured if they put the 101st Airborne in after the way they held the Germans back in Bastogne, replace the present men that were there and put the airborne unit in there with the idea the Germans said, "Oh, if they did such a good job, we'll say in Bastogne, we don't want to go against them." And so then from there, the one thing that, I won't go into that. And so from there, after that, we went to Marmelon. There was a base camp for the 101st in Marmelon, France. We went there to rest up. And then we went to another spot, and I don't know where we were for sure. And so we had foxholes, and there was a big field, a huge field. I guess they use it to hay for the animals or something. But of course, at that point, it was in the middle of winter yet. And so the Germans were over on one side of the field, and we were on the other. There was no real fighting. I mean, once in a while you see true shots fired by either side, or the Germans would be using the 88s once in a while. But I had a very nice foxhole. It was about almost as tall as I was, which was almost 6 feet deep, and had some wood I found covering over the hole, most of the hole, so I could be in there without the snow coming down on me. And the one funny part of it was I always had to put a blanket on. When I laid down in the foxhole, I threw a blanket down on the ground to lay on, And one night, all of a sudden, I said, I'm getting wet. Well, it looked like the water table came up from underneath, and that's why I was getting wet. But anyhow, from there, I couldn't keep any more food down, and I went to the medics, and they gave me the normal stuff, aspirin. That's all they ever gave out for anything. And anyhow, then we went back to the base camp in Marmelon, and they said, go right to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and he says, oh, you got yellow jaundice. He said, go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and that was in May, or the later part of April. And so all of a sudden, I hear that the 101st is going to train to go to Pacific area. So I said, well, I'm going to get out of this hospital. And so I went and got a discharge from the hospital and went down to the base camp we had in Marmelon. The division was over in Germany, near Berchtesgaden. And so I came down, and in fact, I was in Reims, France, the day they signed the peace treaty there. I went back to the camp. Of course, I didn't know they had signed the peace treaty. And all the guns were all going off at the camp, you know, it was in France.
How did you and your comrades feel when you finally got the word and you heard that the war in Europe was over?
I was very happy. And then next day they loaded us on a truck, and we took off over to outside of Berchtesgaden in Germany, because the rest of the regiment was already there, because they had come fighting through while I was in the hospital. And so we took my company, somehow was lucky enough, we took over Hitler's home outside of Berchtesgaden. I came to a little town, begins with an O, but I can't think of the name of it. And so we were in a hotel that was right next to Hitler's home area. And we lived like kings, because there was all tunnels underneath the ground around his home, and many of the bigwigs of the German country had houses up there also, like I can't come up with some of the names. But anyhow, so we were stationed there about 3 months after the war, and we also had charge of his, what we call the Eagle's Nest. It was a house he had on top of the mountain that he could use also. His main house, that's where we were right by in the hotel, had been bombed by the British in April of '45, so it was pretty much destroyed. But all around there were, you know, regular barracks and so forth for troops and everything. But so we stayed there for about, like I say, about 3 months. Then we went to Austria, and then I said, well, I don't want to be marching anymore, so I put in for a transfer to a trucking outfit. And I had gone to, I went to London on pass, came back, and I got permission to join the truck outfit. And then I went over to London again, and the funny part of it was, I didn't have any money because I had just come back from London. When I transferred over to this trucking outfit, they said, we got passes for London. I said, okay, I'll go. but I didn't have any money. So I had already spent it. And there was a sergeant there. He said, come on. He says, I got money. Come on with me. So we went, and so we got to, I can't think of the name of the port where you had to get the ferry to go over to England from France. And we couldn't go over that night because of they said the waves were too heavy. So we had to stay there. So we ran a gambling game, a crap game, if you want to call it. And each one of us ended up with 250 British pounds. And at that point, they were worth $4 a pound in American money. So we were loaded. So we got over to London, and they have the place over there where you could, Americans could take their money and just, they'll hold it for you, you know. So you give, you know, but I went back 22 days over. I had a 10-day pass, so I went back 22 days. But when I was in London, I got a boil. Once in a while I used to get boils on my body, and I got one when I was in London. I went to the medics about it, and they said, no, you shouldn't go back until you get rid of this thing. So every day I went back to the medics, and they stamped, you know, that I had permission to stay. So when we got back, this other guy, he didn't have anything like that. And the captain says, you know, we just marked you guys as AWOL, you know, and absent without leave. And I showed him my papers from the medics. He said, oh, okay, you're all right. And the other guy, they gave him, you know, time, and couldn't go on passes or anything because they were breaking up the 101st Airborne. And so then we went from there in December of 45. And we came home on the Queen Mary, the old Queen Mary, because they had changed that into a troop ship. And I got sick on the troop ship going home. So I ended up being carried off on a stretcher when we got to New York. We went to a place called Camp Shanks, which was in New York State. And the building we were in, it was originally an insane asylum, but the government had taken it over. And the one thing that was funny about it, I had a nice room all to myself and everything, but you had to keep the door open because it was made for an insane asylum, so the person insane could not get out of the room, you know. Anyhow, my parents were only about 20 minutes away, and so they saw me.
What was it like when you finally saw them again after
all that time? Oh, it was great, you know, great. Yep, and then I had to go down to wherever the hell the 101st was, down south somewhere, and I don't remember. And then they got a 30-day leave and came back and went back down there. And so I said, I got enough points here to be discharged. Oh, we're not discharging anybody until April of 46 because they're going to be in a big parade in Washington and we want men. So I had to wait till April, and after the parade was over, I came home. So that's my experience with the 101st Airborne. But it was great. I'm glad I did it, really. And
to this day, what does it mean to you to be able to say, you know, I was a member of the 101st Airborne?
Oh, I'm proud of it. I'm very glad I did it. you know, and I was young, sort of carefree, and so worked out, to my benefit, I think.
Thank you for listening to this interview. For thisiswhywestand.net, I'm Joe Archino.